just in case you are under any illusion that we weren't recording, we are. So we'll just give everyone a few minutes. Jumping in. And it's a good...
Hello.
Hello. Okay.
I'm Jeanette.
Hi, Jeanette. Welcome. Nice to see you.
You too.
Thank you. So we're Anne-Marie's running our chat today, but if you want to help her out, Jeanette, you're very welcome to. The more the merrier, the more hands on deck that we have, better. So while we're letting people in, I will start to do a little bit of talking so you're not just looking at a beautiful screen. Welcome to our gluten-free class. Part of the reason I love doing gluten-free cooking is because, or sharing gluten-free cooking with everyone, is because two of my children are celiac and actually can't eat gluten. They do like to sneak it every now and then, but they do get told off resoundingly by their mother when they do. And part of the reason I actually bought my first Thermomix 10 years ago was because of my children being celiac, and the ability for me to be able to make food that I knew was good for them, didn't have any contaminants in them, wasn't going to make them sick and have a sore stomach, was really powerful at the time. It was also, because they were much smaller then, a really good way to hide veggies for them as well. Now they're teenagers and, you know, have their own bank accounts and their own car, well, not their own cars, but have licenses and that sort of stuff, and have a little bit more freedom to choose their own food. They still actually prefer a lot of the stuff that we make at home to the stuff they buy and take away because it tastes better. And my eldest, who is at uni, is actually about to change her accommodation and take a TM5 with her so that she can actually cook for herself and know that she's having really good, healthy, gluten-free, hopefully, food. So that's why I'm passionate about helping people to understand how to cook gluten-free food. We've got a number of presenters on today, all who have really different backgrounds and different experience in cooking with gluten-free food. So between us all, you are going to pick up lots of tips and tricks. And I can see your comment there, Rebecca, about, learning to eat gluten-free. There's lots of reasons that people choose to eat gluten-free. It's not just for people who are celiac. There are people who choose it. There are people who are intolerant to gluten, people who are trying to do low FODMAP, lots and lots of different reasons that people choose to eat gluten-free. So as we go through, we're going to share a few tips and tricks on how you can convert normal, nothing is normal, recipes that are not specifically gluten-free to make them gluten-free. And a few tips about what is gluten. So we're going to get started and jump in really quickly, but I'm just going to let you know that in Australia, we consider wheat, rye, barley, and oats to have gluten in them. So when you see something that has malt in it, it's normally from barley. It's quite often got gluten in it. Now, oats don't technically have gluten in them, but the protein in oats is so similar to that in wheat and barley and rye, and it's also so often contaminated by the processing in our mills that it's considered to also have gluten in it by most of our manufacturers. So it's always worth checking the ingredients on any packaging you buy to see whether gluten is present or not. Simply saying that wheat is present doesn't mean that gluten is present, because it can actually be processed like glucose syrup. So that's where actually reading instructions becomes really important. Also why making your own becomes much easier than trying to read complicated instructions. So tonight this afternoon, we are going to share a lot of tips, and I can see lots of people sharing in the chat about the reason they're interested in gluten-free. I'm so glad we're able to provide this for you. A quick introduction, although I've been talking. So my name is Therese on the screen, and I am the Business Development Manager for a branch of Thermomix Consultants that covers from the very north of the Northern Beaches all the way down to Little Bay, and the middle of the city. So really Sydney, east, north, up to Barara. So we cover a fair area. But we've also got consultants helping us out tonight who cover other parts of Sydney. So we're really looking at providing support for all Thermomix owners in the Sydney and surrounds. And I know some of you have jumped on from other places, and you're very welcome too. Okay, so assisting me tonight, running the chat and answering your questions, there's a number of consultants who are on who are going to be really helpful and lovely. But the star of the show tonight is Anne-Marie Mulligan. So she's going to be helping you out with all of that. I've just seen Katrina's question. After the session this afternoon, I will send you all out an email. It will contain links to all the recipes we used tonight, a copy of a guide I'm going to share with you about how to blend your own gluten-free flours, and some links to other things that you might find useful and interesting. So you don't need to worry too much about taking notes unless something strikes you that you really want to get down. Okay, so as we go through each of our dishes, the person presenting it's going to introduce themselves. So you really didn't jump on to just hear me talking. You jumped on to learn about gluten-free cooking. So our first presenter is the delightful Kathy Ferguson, who is going to kick you off making, and this is something that I would never have made before I got a Thermomix and before I became a consultant and got more confident. She's making choux pastry, showing you how to make the pastry, make eclairs, and then make espresso cream to fill them. Unfortunately, she and I live a few hours apart, so I can't knock on her door for dessert after this. But if you live close to her, she might be kind and let you know where it is. All right, Kathy, are you ready to go?
Yes, I am. Thanks, Therese. So welcome, everybody. I'm glad you could join us this afternoon. I'm showing you how to make the choux pastry. And before I had a Thermomix, I made choux pastry and it was a nightmare. So I vowed never to make it again. But when I got my Thermomix nine and a half years ago, I made choux pastry and it was so easy. It was great. But I hear a lot of people with anything pastry for gluten-free is just doesn't taste good. Can I tell you, I did a test run the other night and they are nice. They're really nice. So a couple of things, I'm going to talk you through the 3 stages of this and do a little bit behind the scenes. So what I've done so far is I've made the hazelnut and sugar, so it's like a praline sort of mix. So I've done this already. So what I've got here, if you can see there, I've got hazelnuts and sugar. So it's 50 grams of sugar. I've put it into a little saucepan. It's easier than waiting, and the temperature's not safe enough for us to use in a Thermomix. And so you let that get a little bit brown, throw in your hazelnuts, then pour it out onto a sheet of baking paper and just let it set. And then once it's cooled, you can put it into the Thermomix, and all you need to do is put it on turbo for 5 seconds, just once. And then with the once, I still get quite fine. You can do it more if you like. It just depends on what you want for your finished result. Or if you don't want it that fine, just get a rolling pin, put the hazelnuts between 2 sheets of baking paper and use a rolling pin. So that's one part, but we're going to use that at the end. The other part is the espresso cream. So all I've done is I have 1 shot of espresso. I've let that sit in here and let it cool. We don't want it hot with cream for obvious reasons. So that's there. I've also got some raw sugar, which I will mill first, and then I will add the cream and the espresso, and it will take about 20 seconds. So just enough to make it firm to put in for your filling in your choux pastry once it's done. Okay, so that's those 2 parts. The other part, which is the tricky part, but not today, is our choux pastry. So what I've done in here already, I've put in the water, the cube butter, a pinch of salt and a pinch of sugar, and put that on here 100 degrees for 5 minutes. So I've let that do its thing, walked away, and then I've added the flours, the gluten-free flours. So what I've got is, it's a glutinous rice flour, I've got sorghum, and I've got corn flour, just those 3. And what I've done, I don't know if you can see in there, I've thrown that in at the end for about 30 seconds to all combine. So I've let that sit there. Now it tells you to give it 30 minutes to cool down, which I've done. And it's still, even on my temperature gauge here, it's 45 degrees, but that's okay. So all I'm going to do now is put my lid back on, and I'm going to turn my speed to 5, and then I'm going to put the eggs in, which I've broken full eggs, one at a time till they're well combined. Then I'm going to show you the pastry part. So let's just watch this one. So turn it to speed 5, get it there.
I do love that hole in the top for dropping your egg yolks through. It's very handy to be able to see what's happening.
So I don't know if you heard that noise. It was just quite a sloppy sort of noise to start with, and when it really starts to combine, it gets that firm noise. I don't know if you know what I mean, but when you're making it, you'll hear what I'm trying to say. So basically, we've let that go, and we've got a dough in there. Okay, so the next part is we need to put it into a piping bag, and if you don't have a piping bag, you can always spoon it out, but the choice is yours. Okay, so what I've got is a jug, and if you can see down here, I've put in the piping tube, and you want a small one, otherwise it can be quite runny. But what I do when I put it into this jug or any vessel, to make it easy, because you're just a one-man band, bend this up, because if you don't, it's going to pour out the other end before you get to pick it up and use it. Okay, so pop that in there like that, and then press it down and around, and then we're going to go in here, scrape down the sides, and then try and get as much as you can out in one go. So I'm just going to pour that in there. I'm not sure if you can see, but basically that's what I'm doing. Scrape it all in there together. And I tend to I scrape it off my thing and do it that way. That way you don't get your fingers in there. And I'm getting as much off there as I can. Okay. 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 Now I've got most of it out, but if you want to get more off those blades, always put it back onto your base and turbo it for half a second, and it will all flick out to the side. You'll have none on your blades. But I'm not going to do that today because of time. So I'm going to put that aside, and I'm going to lift this sides up, pull this up. Okay, so I'm going to move my jug out of the way, and whilst it's up like this, I'm going to twist it a bit and put my finger over the top, okay? All right, so we're going to pipe along here. Now, the bigger you make it, the more they'll spread. So if you do smaller ones, they will look better. So test a few, see what you like, and go from there. You can always scrape it back up and put it back into your piping bag and do them again. So don't ever think you've piped it, you've lost it. That's not the case. So I'm going to pipe these out, and then I'm going to put them in the oven, and I'm going to come back later and show you my finished product and decorate it. And I'm going to put these in for 15 minutes into the oven, and then I'll take them out. Then I put a little hole in the bottom, like just with a skewer, to make it so that it dries out a bit, and I'll put it back in the oven for 15 minutes. But it's very important to make sure that this dough has cooled when you're doing it, because that way it'll make your profiteroles, your eclairs, a lot crispier. Okay, so here I go. I'm going to do these now. Let's see. And all you need to do is put it onto a baking sheet. or a silicone mat, whatever you choose. So you can see how easy this is. And there we go. It's not runny like you think with a lot of gluten-free flours. And I was very surprised when I did the test run, but these will puff off beautifully. And if you want to do the long ones, then you're more than welcome. So there. Okay. So if you want to move along, Teresa.
Yeah, I will. But thank you, Kathy. I haven't made choux pastry for a while, and I'm getting a little bit inspired. So thank you.
It's good. See how easy it is? I'm not even panicking that it's going to run out like a lot of gluten-free flours. See?
Yeah. And that's actually a really good point. So I'm going to spotlight me because I'm actually next in the presenting. So thank you very much, Kathy. So what I am doing is I'm just going to mute Kathy so she can cook away happily. I'm actually going to make sticky toffee puddings. I'm using the recipe, I'm going to turn my Thermomix on. I'm using the recipe from Cookie Do, which is not a gluten-free recipe. What I'm doing is substituting gluten-free flour into it. Now, we get a lot of questions all the time from people saying, you know, can I make pizza dough and just use the normal recipe and put gluten-free flour in, and will it work? And the answer is no. So it's really good to understand when you can substitute and when you can't substitute. So I suppose an easy way to think about it is, what is the texture of your finished product? If it's a biscuit, so it's sort of hard, no problem, you can substitute. If it's a cake with quite a dense texture, no problem, you can substitute. Is it something that has a bit of chew, a bit of pull like dough? You can't substitute, because gluten is actually what makes doughs come together, stretch out, rise. And as Kathy was just saying, gluten-free flour, quite often when you're cooking with gluten-free things, you end up with a very wet, sloppy mix, not a firm mix. And that's because you actually have to use sort of different ratios. So I'm going to get this going, and then I'm actually going to share with you a guide I've put together on how you can substitute flours and with those ratios, because Kathy's just used sorghum flour in her choux pastry, and you might not have sorghum flour in your cupboard. But if you understand how the different starches and grains that are gluten-free work, you'll know what you can use to substitute and still end up with a good result. So that's why I'm making sticky toffee pudding, so I can give you that example. And would I like to resume my last recipe? Yes, I would. So I've actually started off already. So one of the tricks with sticky toffee puddings is that you take your pitted dates and you add bicarb soda and boiling water, and that just helps to sort of soften them up, get them ready to be, you know, release their sweetness and be quite gorgeous. I'm just going to remind my couch people that I'm on screen. There we go. Otherwise, I'll start talking about the zombies on the PlayStation game. Now, the other trick, of course, is that, as you know, when you're using Cookie Do on your screen of your Thermomix, you can actually jump ahead to the steps that you want to make. And I don't want to make the sauce straight away. As you might have gathered, I've got 2 Thermomixes on my bench. One of the great advantages of being a consultant, which I'll talk to you about soon. I earned both of these, but it means I can have the sauce going in one and the puddings going in the other. So I'm actually going to jump straight to the recipe where it starts making the puddings. And what it's telling me here is to actually add the dates and the water that I've been soaking them in, and the bicarb soda, straight into the bowl. Then I need to add 40 grams of butter cut into pieces, which here's some I prepared earlier. Let's hope I get the right bowl. Yes. And then 110 grams of brown sugar. Now, I realise that a lot of you are in lockdown and that maybe going out to the shops is not your favourite thing at the moment. If you find yourself running out of brown sugar, did you know you can make your own in the Thermomix? You need raw sugar and molasses. And can I tell you, I just put too much in, no one's going to care. I love making my own brown sugar because it's really cheap, and I live on a farm out of town, so being able to make something myself without having to drive to the shops is a gift. All right, it's asking for 150 grams of plain flour. So I'm using my gluten-free plain flour mix that I have pre-made and blended. And one of the things to understand about how you substitute gluten-free and why the Thermomix is so good for it is you do it by weight, not by volume. So, of course, with the Thermomix, we cook by weight, not volume. So it's perfect. So I'm going to add 150 grams of plain flour. Oh, I don't know if you can see that, but it's 151. I was guesstimating. It's very rare that I get it right like that, but I did. So, and then half a teaspoon of baking powder. And you'll be shocked to know you can also make this in your Thermomix. So I make my own baking powder because it means, again, I know what's in it and I know it's not contaminated. Most baking powders these days do say they're gluten-free, but 10 years ago, when I was first starting to cook gluten-free food, it wasn't as easy. So making your own means that you know exactly what's in it and you're not worried about contamination. So half a teaspoon of that. An egg, which I'm about to grab from the fridge because I forgot to have it ready. So give me one moment. The great thing about cooking in your own kitchen, if you forget something, you can just go and grab it. And I normally make a big song and dance about them being farm fresh eggs, but my chickens are not laying, so I had to buy some this morning. It was an outrage. And then we're going to pop the lid on. I'm just going to mix that together, I can speak, together for 20 seconds on speed 4, just to bring it all together. There's very little point talking on Zoom when something's cooking because it blocks out our voices. So instead, okay. Now what it's telling me is, first of all, I'll show you that beautiful, thick, gooey pudding mix. It's telling me to pour it into prepared moulds. So the recipe actually calls for Dariol moulds, which we do have in our mix shop, these gorgeous little silicone individual moulds, which are really easy to use and I highly recommend them. But I'm actually going to show you a different trick tonight, which is also good for any sort of cooking, but helpful for gluten-free cooking. And that is to use muffin pans, because the round one actually fits into the base of your varoma, if you're going to steam these, and the square one fits onto the tray of your varoma. So you can actually steam them. Now, these puddings require steaming anyway, but one of the things that's good to know is you can actually steam any muffins, and I'm going to be doing this while I talk to you. So if you're making muffins and you have a wonky oven, if you steam them, gluten-free or otherwise, they will come up beautifully and they stay moist for a lot longer than if you bake them. So this is a trick that Matt Sinclair, who was one of the chefs who helped us launch the TM6, shared at a talk I was at. He said, if you want the kids' muffins to be nice and fresh and not dry and crumbly in their lunchbox, steam them in the varoma instead of baking them in the oven. And I was like, I've never thought of that. It also means if you're one of these people like me who likes to get away camping and likes to do a bit of glamping and take the Thermomix with you, you don't need to worry about not having an oven to produce beautiful food for your family. So what I'm going to do now is, you can see.
Sorry, Teresa, we've just got a question. Do you grease the for something like muffins? Do you grease? You were just about to say that, weren't you?
Oh, I've forgotten. So thank you for reminding me. With silicone, the trick I was shown by another consultant, and again, when you're a consultant, you learn so much, is with silicone, actually wet it, run it under the tap, give it a flick, and then pop your thing, and it will come out smoothly. You don't have to worry about greasing silicone, which is a bit hard because it's a bit floppy. So you can see that fits perfectly in the bottom. And I will go on to put the square one up here with the rest of the dough, because I'd rather have a few extra small ones than too many big ones, because they might last for more than half an hour that way. While I'm doing that, I'll then pop them on. I'll put about 700 grams of water into the bowl, probably a clean bowl. And then I'll steam them for 30 minutes. So at the end, I'll come back and show them to you. Something to be aware of when you're steaming is that sometimes you can get that buildup of condensation and it sort of sticks in the middle and can drop down into your middle muffin. If you pop a bit of baking paper under your lid across the top, it absorbs that and stops it dropping in. So I will do that if I remember. The other thing is I'm going to get my sticky toffee sauce going in my second Thermomix, and I'll tell you about that at the end. It's pretty straightforward. It's, brown sugar, golden syrup, which you can make in your Thermomix. Again, the things you can make at home with a bit of raw sugar are amazing. And we can send that link out to you as well. So yeah, butter, golden syrup, brown sugar, vanilla, not very healthy, but very tasty. And I'll have that going as well. So before I switch over, I am going to share my screen with you and show you what will be sent out in the email after the show, which is this guide to what you can consider a grain or a starch when you're making up a gluten-free flour blend. And as I said, if you understand what the different properties are, then you'll know what you can substitute. So for example, if Kathy didn't have sorghum, but she had millet flour, or she had millet that she could mill into flour, she could substitute that. Same with brown rice, same with amaranth. However, your white rice and your glutinous rice and your tapioca are all the ones, those starchy ones. You can substitute those by weight as well. And what I've got in here is basically what we call a whole grain flour blend. So it's got much more of the grains. It's a 70-30 split. And that's really good for putting into things like muffins, banana breads, those heavier things. The all-purpose flour blend is 60-40 and is much better for going into, your biscuits and that sort of stuff. So you don't need to make notes about that. I will send that out to you. But just to understand that you don't have to have every sort of bizarre grain in your pantry to cook gluten-free. You can actually substitute when you don't have them. All right, I'm going to go back to these. And I've just seen that Mel has popped into the chat the other tip I was going to give you. So thank you for that reminder, Mel. If you're looking for tapioca rice or glutinous rice flour, rather than wanting to make your own, the Asian section of the supermarket is where you get them for $1 a bag. So if I buy tapioca flour in Woolies in a bag, it's about $6. If I go to the Asian section, it's $1 for the same volume. So definitely worth checking out the Asian section of your supermarket to see if those flours are there. If you can't find glutinous rice flour, sushi rice is glutinous rice. So you can actually mill your own in the Thermomix. And I've added some guides about milling for different grains onto that guide that we'll send out to you. All right, that is enough from me. You might have gathered I'm a little passionate about gluten-free, but I'm actually going to hand you over to the fabulous Bernie, formerly known as Bernadette, of course, and she is going to tell you all about how to make the fabulous buckwheat and almond sliders, which are just a beautiful bun for using for all sorts of things. So over to you, Bernie.
Well, hello, my name's Bernie. I've been a consultant for over 5 years now, and I originally got my Thermomix to help me cook from scratch because I have a lot of intolerances and things I can't eat, gluten being one of those. So I do, most of my cooking is gluten-free, but I also have to make sure that I'm having a really balanced diet and having enough fiber as well. And so that's why I chose this recipe today, because we're using buckwheat and it's really high in fiber. But I'm actually going to start with making some baking powder, which we will need to use in the sliders. So Teresa said you can make your own. So we're going to make our own. There's a few different recipes on Cook I Do for making your own baking powder. One recipe will use rice, and you can mill that into rice flour. This recipe I've chosen uses arrowroot flour, which means that when you're making things without grains and that, it can be a little bit more on the paleo or low carb side of things. So we're going to start with 90 grams of bicarb soda. Popping that in. It's a really simple 3-ingredient recipe. I've got 120 grams of cream of tartar. And then this is where you can have your arrowroot flour, or you can use rice flour as an option as well. So popping that in there. And then we're just going to give it a little bit of a mix. Simple. It was 120 grams of the cream of tartar and then 90 grams of both the other items for that person who asked in the chat. Now I'm going to pop this into a jar. Lovely little trick is to use your lid as a bit of a, I lost my words, what's that called? Funnel. There we go. Especially if you're as messy and uncoordinated as I am. Now, when I'm doing something like making a staple ingredient like this, I like to do it before I'm going to make something that uses it, and then I don't have to wash the bowl. So we're not going to wash the bowl there. I might need to wipe down the Thermomix though. All right. Excuse me. Okay, so that's our baking powder. Makes a nice amount, and it is quite affordable to make it yourself. You're not having to read the ingredients of everything that you're buying either. So really good thing to do there. And then that's it, finished. Keeping that stores in the cupboard for as long as the store-bought stuff does. So now we're going to make our slider buns, and first thing we do is preheat the oven, get our tray ready. So I'm going to be using our thermo mat and our oven mat. And our thermo mat is actually something that you get with your purchase of your Thermomix at the moment. We're going to put almonds in, so 100 grams of raw almonds. I have successfully swapped the almonds out for sunflower seeds. So if you are trying the low FODMAP and almonds and not your friend, go for it with the sunflower seeds, or if you have a nut allergy as well. And then we're going to add 100 grams of buckwheat. Don't let the name fool you. Buckwheat has no wheat in it. It is gluten-free. It's one of those funny seeds that's kind of pretending to be a grain. You're going to add 100 grams of that. Buckwheat is very high in fiber. It's also going to help with your heart health. So it's good to have some of it in your diet. And 100 grams of that. Then we're going to put in some psyllium husk. So psyllium is great for lowering your cholesterol. It's great for your heart health as well. And it helps us to create sticky doughs when we're doing our gluten-free cooking. So it's worth having some of that in your pantry as well. We're going to put 2 teaspoons of our baking powder that we made in. And I'm going to err on the side of half of one there because I had some left over in the bowl. Teaspoon of salt. What I actually love about these particular rolls is that they're yeast-free as well, which is something I don't tolerate that well. So it's good for me to have yeast-free. I'm just going to tap off some of that excess off my lid. Now we're going to mill these. So it's going to be nice and loud. So I'm not going to talk for the next 30 seconds. And we're just going to go all the way to speed 10. All right, so I'll give you a look at that. Little bit of a hint. Give it a couple of taps after you've done some milling, and it will take things off the top for you. And then I'll tap the sides to get it off my blade. So have a look at that, a nice fine mill. We've created our own gluten-free flour mix, so to speak. We're going to add an egg in now. So 1 egg, and then we're going to add some boiling water. So I've boiled some water in my other Thermomix, another plus to being a consultant. I earned a second one for nothing. So that was good too. So I've boiled some water using kettle mode. Of course, if you don't have 2 and you want to use your regular kettles, that's okay. 230 grams of boiling water. It does need to be boiling for this recipe, and it helps our dough to create some elasticity with our other ingredients, so especially our psyllium husk with the warm water is activating that. We're going to add in some honey and some apple cider vinegar. If you don't tolerate apple cider vinegar, feel free to use white vinegar, it works fine. And if you don't tolerate honey, then rice malt syrup works well too. So for those who are following the low FODMAP diet. All right, so that's going in. And then we're going to give it a bit of a knead. So it's going to go on dough mode now onto our kneading function, and it's going to go for 1 minute. So we're just going to knead that. And hopefully, I'm not sure if you will be able to hear me or not. Yep, you can. Good. Okay, so we are going to use our thermomat, which is great to be able to have this. It's going to help to rest our dough. I'm going to rest it for about 15 minutes. And then I'm going to show you how to use the pre-clean function as well. All right. So with kneading gluten-free doughs, often we don't use the kneading function. We're just creating batters. But I love how these actually create a nice little dough so we can roll them up. Yeah, there's some people asking things in the chat about psyllium husk. So psyllium husk doesn't always need milling. And you can get it at Woolies at Coles. Yep. Cool. 9 seconds. All right.
Hey Bernie, is that the new mat, is it?
One of the new ones, yep, with our nice little circle, which is great for all sorts of things, pizza and doughs and things like that. All right. Let me show you. It's a nice sticky dough in there. Popping it upside down, a little bit of a wiggle of your, the bottom of your blades there, and give it a shake. Get as much as you can out, and then out with your spatula. Resist the urge to put your hands in there because the blade is sharp, but also it's hot because we use boiling water. So we're going to pop that. And I just like to use my spatula to put it all together, and then we're going to let it rest for 15 minutes. It really does need the resting time, so don't be too much in a rush when you're making this recipe. One last thing, let me show you one of my favorite things about the TM6. Pre-clean. So we're going to pop over here, put some water in, just 1 litre up to the line there, enough to cover the blades. Pop in a bit of dishwashing liquid or vinegar, whatever you want. Lid on, and then I'm just going to turn it around to dough, and it's going to clean for me while we pop over to whoever it is that's next.
Thank you, Bernie. I have to say pre-clean is one of my favourite modes as well. I'm going to quickly switch back to me simply because I love having the cat. No, not about that. There was a bit of conversation in the chat about cleaning your Thermomix. For anyone who hasn't seen our new brush in the mix shop, it's got this beautiful soft end for brushing all the crumbs out, a stiffer brush, which is great for getting in and getting all the dried bits that end up in the arms and around your screen and around your dial. So I'm a bit of a fan of this. And I'm just saying, Rebecca, yes, you can make the dough in a TM5. It doesn't require any of the special high heat functions of the TM6. Okay, I am now jumping over to the delightful Sharon Wong, who is going to show you how to make they've got a couple of different names, don't they, Sharon?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay. Hi, everyone. Yeah, this dish is called dosa or tosai. So depending on which part of Indian, I think the South say tosai. So in Malay, I come from Malaysia, so a lot of Malaysians will say tosai instead of dosa. So it's a very healthy crepe to have, or a pancake. So it depends on how thin or how thick you would like to do it. It's up to you. I have, and it goes through a fermentation process to liven it. So it's a little bit like doing sourdough. And it basically really, really, really healthy kind of a diet. I also made ghee, which is clarified butter. and you can see the bottom is where the milk solids have settled, but the top is what I will be using. And we do have those recipes all in Cookie Dough for you to do to make it. So this dish is really quick and simple. That's why I chose this version. There is a few other versions. So I'm just going to start. So it says to place the large bowl on top. Basmati rice. So I have basmati rice. And 9 ounce. So this is an American version. So you can see that even though it's asking for ounces, I don't really have to change the scales, from metric to imperial. It just does it for me. A little bit short, doesn't matter. And then the next one I'm going to do is urad dal. So what I've done is, some people will soak it's a black mung bean, and they'll soak it until and they can remove the skin. But rather than to put too much time into cleaning it, and it's a lot of time, I just bought this, which is already cleaned for me. So much easier. Now, this traditionally is a rice dish, but some people prefer to do add the urad dal into it to give it a bit of more of a bite and crunch, and a little bit more flavor. And next, this is chickpeas, and it's split already. And all this, you can just go to a local Indian store and they should have it, because these ingredients are very common for Indians to cook all their dishes. It's nothing that is special. Next, a teaspoon of fenugreek. So fenugreek is the seed. Okay. And Indians sometimes call it, the Indians call it methi seed, but we call it fenugreek. So, okay. And then basically, you're going to rinse this until it goes clear. So, so you'll wash it until it's runs clear, and then you let it sit for about at least 5 hours, and you can see it has expanded. Okay, so after that 5 hours, I would rinse, drain all of this water out. Use my simmering basket to catch that water, to catch the rice and the beans. And I'm not throwing out the water because I'm going to use it. And the rest just goes into the bowl. And it's asked for 25 ounces of water. So there's 3 dots on the top, and I can call the scales up for that. It doesn't like my fingers. Got it. Sorry about that. So we use that leftover water and weigh in 25 ounce. Just see all the water. Must have absorbed it. I had this soaking a little bit longer, so it's absorbed a lot of the water up. So next. Oh, sorry, 11 ounce. I made a mistake, sorry. But I'm going to keep it at 25 because I want a slightly runnier so that I can do that thin one, because what I have at the moment is quite thick. And what I'm going to do is it's going to blend for 1 minute at speed 4.
Now, while Sharon's waiting for that, because I do love to fill in the screen with other things, I'm just going to quickly do a screen share for you. And as soon as I find the right one, and just let you know, if you don't already have a TM6 and you're interested in one, as Bernie referred to earlier, your July gift with purchase is that amazing thermomat that we use for everything, and the bread tin, which I am a huge fan of because it's silicone lined, so you don't have to worry about, oiling it and all the rest of it. And it's great when you're making gluten-free loaves, they can be very sticky. So having something that it will just tip out is fantastic. So that is awesome. And I'm watching Sharon to see if she's... You ready for me to go back to you, Sharon?
I actually have a batch prepared already.
Oh, perfect.
So
I love it when someone says, here's one I prepared earlier.
Yeah. So this has been blended and it's been resting for quite a while. How we rest it is to place it. I should show you. So what we do is once the mix is ready, put the bowl into the baroma, and what I have is a griddle sitting in the middle, and I will place my mix on top and let it ferment for 10 hours. Now, because it's winter and we're having a bit of a cold winter, I found 10 hours wasn't long enough. This is probably an additional, and what happens is that after another 2 more hours, that's what I got. So it has from here increased almost double. Okay, and so this is my mix that I have. And this is where I'm going to make my roti canai now. So some batter, and how do you do it is you pour some batter into your pan, and what you do is you do it in circular motion to push the batter out, and you try to make it as thin as you want. Some people will scrape away the excess, but I'm just going to leave it. And with my ghee, I'm going to put some, and that will help flavor and cook the pancake or the crepe. Now, there is a recipe which's got this spicy potato that goes along with this dish. And there's a lot of chutney dishes that you can do. So what I have here is a coconut chutney and spicy potato. So what we're going to do is we're going to put it in the middle, so like a burrito, and fold it over. So you can fold it in half or you can fold it in thirds. If you're doing thirds, just make sure you don't put too much so that you can't close it.
We've lost you on screen, Sharon.
Sharon, you've disappeared.
I disappeared. Sorry.
Is it like, are you like calories? They just disappear.
Oh, I tell you what, I wish they would. While she's cooking that, that is fantastic. Someone asked a question about what temperature we do fermentation on, and fermentation overnight in the Thermomix, or she's back, is about 70 degrees, which means that it's just holding it warm. Oh, look at that.
You should smell the smell here.
I'm going to my Indian supermarket on Monday because I need to get this into our life.
So just a little bit in the middle. So this is actually one of my favorite breakfast dish. I don't usually have the potatoes in there. I just have the pancake with this coconut chutney. I just love that flavor. And the pancake should be a little bit on the tangy side because that's what it's about, the fermentation. So if it's not tangy enough, then it hasn't fermented long enough, okay? And if you want it crispy, just cook it a little bit longer and that crispness will come up. And that's because of that chickpea and that, and the, what do you call it?
The dal.
The dal, yeah. It's a mung bean, part of the mung bean family.
It looks fantastic, Sharon. Honestly, I wish I was closer. I'd be knocking on your door. Forget about those desserts I wanted. That looks beautiful.
I have a guest here. She stuck with me for the lockdown. So I actually gave her a bit to try to just make sure that it tasted okay. Because
what a terrible place to be stuck for lockdown, all this gourmet food. There's a question that in the chat. Can you make the crepes and freeze them, or is that something that works?
Sorry, what was that?
Can you make the crepes and freeze them?
Yes, you can, but you should allow it to ferment. It can keep in the fridge. So after fermentation, you can keep it in the fridge. So it's just like sourdough. I don't know about freezing. If you freeze it, I think you bring it out and warm it out and let it ferment that way.
Perfect.
So you can make the batter ahead of time and then just put it in the fridge, but do the fermentation process later. Because, so you can prepare in advance. You don't have to do everything straight away.
Thank you, Sharon. Have you finished with your tips for now? So I can pop over to Kirsty for the next dish and we'll come back to you so you can show us the finished product. Thank you. I've just got to find Kirsty on my screen. I had her and she's disappeared. Hang on a moment. Let me remove the spotlight. And Kirsty, if you speak, I should.
I'm waving.
Yay! Yay! So hopefully everyone can see her now. Over to you.
Thank you, Teresa. Okay, so look, I am not a gluten-free expert. We are very fortunate in our family not to have any intolerances or allergies. However, one of the awesome things about being a Thermomix consultant is that we get to be encouraged out of our comfort zone. And one of our demonstration dishes for anybody who's hosted probably in the last maybe 2 years are the Brazilian cheese puffs. And these happen to be gluten-free. These have become a firm favourite in our house. They're a great little afternoon tea snack, particularly winter when they come home and they're looking for something warm. And they're also a great little side to have with a bowl of soup for an easy lunch or, Sunday night dinner or whatever. Now, a little bit of a cheat that I'm going to show you today. I did not come up with this. I saw it on a Facebook group, I don't know, a couple of months ago, whatever, it kind of went a bit viral. And I stored that away, so I thought that could be really handy for somebody. So what I'm going to show you today, I'm going to show you the Brazilian cheese puff batter, and then we're going to do something a little bit different with them. So if you are new to gluten-free, you definitely need to check out this recipe. It is a winner, however you end up cooking them. All right, so start cooking. Don't go to sleep on me now. Okay, preheat the oven. I'm not going to do that because we're going to cook them a different way. So I'm not going to grease my mini muffin tray either. Now, don't be put off by the type of cheese in this. It's 70 grams of Gruyere cheese. I have never bought Gruyere in my life. I am using a mixture of Parmesan, Pecorino will also work. I've also got like a smoky cheddar, aged cheddar left over from a cheese platter that got a bit dried out. don't waste it. Pop it in a bag in the fridge. So I've just got a combination of different things. In a pinch, good old tasty cheese will also work. It just won't have quite as strong a flavour. So 70 grams, stuck in the bottom of my container, going in there. And we're just going to grate that. Sorry, I'm kind of closing myself off there. I'm working in a different part of my kitchen from where I usually would. Okay, so 10 seconds on speed 9. I'm so glad that Zoom mutes it when it's noisy like that. Okay, so for anybody who is completely new to the Thermomix, I will just show you what we did to that cheese. Now, because it's been sitting out on the bench for a little while, even though it's not a very warm day, and I was using a softer cheese, it has gone slightly mushy. I probably could have stopped that at about 7 or 8 seconds, but that's okay. All right, so then our next ingredient is 160 grams of full cream milk. Now, if you can use lactose-free milk or other milk besides dairy milk, although you have got the cheese in there. Nutritional yeast flakes, if you couldn't have, sorry, just need to concentrate for a second, if you couldn't have the cheese or any of the dairy. Okay, now 60 grams of vegetable oil. I don't even have vegetable oil in the house. I'm using either rice bran or you can use a very mild extra virgin olive oil. Sorry, I do have to concentrate when I'm weighing liquids in.
While you're concentrating, I can tell you that my favourite oil for these is actually avocado oil. And if you get avocado oil from Costco, it's a really pale oil. If you get it from Woolies, it's quite green, so you end up with green cheese puffs. They still taste good. They're just a bit of a funky colour.
And actually on that, I will sometimes throw in a handful of basil with the cheese and have like pesto green cheesy puffs, and that's also beautiful. There's lots of things that you can do with this recipe. So 1 egg, but I was going to say rice bran or grapeseed oil. They're my usual 2 options for this recipe. Now, arrowroot flour. As Teresa mentioned earlier, different ways you can buy your arrowroot flour. So if you're shopping in Woolies, this is the usual sort of thing, and that happens to be the right size container for this recipe. But it's about $1.70 for that container, $1.75, something or other. But the usual Woolies has an Asian section. You get this whole bag for $1. So this is a 500 gram bag. So this is much better value. And then I just keep refilling this tin for my demonstrations. And when I'm just working at home, I just have a big container here that I've emptied a couple of bags into, but that is definitely a much more economical way of buying it. So this one's actually sold as tapioca starch, but if you have a look on the arrowroot tin, in brackets it says tapioca starch. Now, if you go and talk to the ladies in the source, they'll tell you they're not actually the same. They both work in this recipe and they're both gluten-free. So I'm just going to pop in my flour. So 170 grams. This recipe is on Cookie Do if anybody's looking for it. A little bit more. Oh, 174, that's all right. And a teaspoon of salt. And don't miss out this teaspoon of salt because you do want that salty, cheesy flavour in there. Yum, yum. All right, so we're just going to blend that all together. And while that's blending, I'm going to turn my stove on.
While Kirsty's doing that, I'm going to quickly spotlight myself. Oh, she's back. Look at that. I'm going to do a quick sharing of the screen to show you. I made the sticky toffee sauce while my puddings are steaming, and can I tell you, it's addictively good. But you, oh, sorry, and there's an alarm going off in my house. You can actually double this recipe and store it in a sterilised jar in your fridge for quite some time. So if you're making it, you can double it. All right, Kirsty, do we need to go back to you now?
Yes, so I'm just scraping down the batter and we're just going to give that another few seconds just to make sure that none of that cheese is kind of stuck on the bottom. And yes, I've got big sort of lumps of cheese. So we just give that another quick 10 seconds this time. Actually, no, it's only 5 seconds. Okay, so this is where we're now going to depart from the recipe. So normally it tells you to pop it into your mini muffin pan, and they, if you've never made them, they're really cool. They puff up. In texture, they're a little bit like, what are those things the English have with their roast dinners? The Yorkshire puddings. You know how they kind of, you do it in a hot pan and they puff right up. They remind me a little bit of that, except cheesy. But what I'm going to show you is that you can actually cook these in a fry pan as wraps instead. Oh, sorry, I've got this here to show you. If you were doing it into your mini muffin pan, these are awesome. These are our Cupcake Pens from the mix shop. So they've got a nozzle at that end. You pop the lid on though, unscrew the base, fill that with your batter. Easy peasy for pancakes, muffins, all of that sort of thing. Great if the kids are helping you so you don't end up with quite so much mess all over your kitchen. But I don't need to do that because we're going to cook these in a fry pan. So bear with me. I'm just going to turn my camera around the other way. Whirlwind tour of my kitchen. Okay, so I've got my pan on here. I'm just going to add a little bit of oil. And I've just got my pan on medium heat. This is a crepe pan, so it is nice and thin. It heats up really quickly. So the other night I did a cook along with some of my customers and we made the Mexican stack. Another great recipe if you haven't discovered it, but don't be put off by the fact that in the recipe you're using wraps or tortillas as the layers, because I'm assuming, and I've never bought them, that buying gluten-free wraps is probably quite an expensive exercise. So what we did was we used this batter and made our own wraps. So you just put that in there, give that a swirl. These cook really quickly. Depending on how long you cook them, you can either end up with a really nice crispy one, or if you have them a little bit thicker and maybe don't cook them quite as long, they're a really pliable wrap. So you can then use them in place of tortillas for your Mexican night, for those layers in the Mexican stack. Just, you know, roll it up and have it as a nice little nibbly, you know, dip it in some sweet chili sauce or something. So many things you can do with this. Absolutely delicious, really easy to make, only about 5 ingredients, and very, you know, easy ingredients to find. You're not even having to mill any grains or seeds or anything. So this is about ready to flip over. See what I said? I feel like I'm almost cheating a bit presenting this at a gluten-free class because it's just so deceptively easy. I probably could do with an extra couple of seconds longer, but I'm impatient and you're all watching. So there's my first wrap, trying to get the colour, getting a bit of glare. Sorry, what was that, Tammy? Would be delicious with some sun-dried tomato, I'm sure that was saying. But yeah, there's lots of our beautiful dips, nice pesto dip that you could have with this as well. So really versatile. Let me know what other cool combinations you come up with. This is also really cool as a Brekkie Burrito. So this is another batter that you could make up the night before, have it in your cupcake pen or just leave it in your bowl overnight in the fridge. And then in the morning, you can make your cheesy crepes, bacon and eggs, you know, a beautiful scrambled egg omelette-y sort of thing that you could then pop in here. There's a beautiful caramelized onion and bacon chutney that I often do at Christmas time in little jars as gifts for people. That is also delicious on here with a scrambled egg. Yeah, the tuna dip, so many options for what you could use this with. So I hope that's a nice, easy starting place for anybody who's just starting out with gluten-free.
Yum. Somebody wants to know where you got your pan from.
My pan, just a kitchen store. Hang on, let me see if I can tell you what brand it is without dropping my wrap. Oh, well, there you go. It's Crofton, which I think is the Aldi brand. Aldi is wonderful for some of those things, and it's lasted really well.
And I'm going to pop in a bit of a plug. My crepe pan is one that I actually got because I saw Thermomix consultant using one on Facebook, and it's from Solid Techniques, which is the cast iron Australian made. Absolutely amazing. If you want to invest in your cookware, I'm putting a plug in. I don't get commission, but I swear I should. They are fantastic for crepes and this sort of thing. So check them out online. And yeah, Bev, who's in the chat saying it's the best, is the person I saw using it online, which is why I bought one. So there you go with the things we learn. All right, thank you, Kirsty. We're going to zoom back to the delightful Bernie, who is going to show us what has happened with her beautiful slider buns.
Okay, so what I want to show you now is how to prepare them to pop in the oven. So here's our dough now. You can see it's a lot more solid than it was before and a lot less sticky. It's still a bit sticky, so you'll notice I'm wearing gloves. My lights decided to run out of battery. Another trick is to have some gloves on and wet them, and wet your spatula. And we're going to break this into 4 equal-ish parts. No, 6 equal-ish parts, sorry, get it right in a second. And we're going to roll these up. So I'll show you how to roll them. Pop our mat onto the bench. And then again, keep wetting your hands. And then you can just shape them into a roll type shape, a little ball, and pop that on your tray. They don't have to look perfect at this stage. They'll settle down a bit. So just a quick roll, space them apart, wet your hands if it's starting to stick, and popping those on. And then I'll show you how to top them as well with some seeds. Because I'm wetting my hands as I go, like a disco in here, because I'm wetting my hands as I go, they're going to be nice and wet at the top, which means that our seeds will stick well as well. So popping them on the tray there, and then let's pop some seeds on top. So I've got some pepitas and some sunflower seeds, and I just like to push them down on top. I'm really not precious about it. If you don't like seeds, you could leave them off. If you want sesame seeds or something else, you could put those on. So that's it. Those are ready to go in the oven. They're going to go in a 180-degree oven, and they take 50 to 55 minutes. I'll show you the ones I prepared earlier. Here's the prepared rolls. Now, a tip to knowing when they're ready, it does say it in the tip, is to give them a flick, and you should hear them sound hollow. I'm going to use our little bread knife from our kitchen toolkit and show you the inside. So have a look at that, nice and spongy, just like bread. These are great. I love having them as a bacon and egg roll. You have some chicken in there, some mayo, that kind of stuff. Whatever really. I'm going to have it tonight with some soup probably, or something like that, or with our stew that we might have as well. Haven't quite decided. So that's your slider buns ready to go. Also, if you're looking for a wrap recipe, I have a recipe on the recipe community if you can't have dairy. So I can't have dairy, so mine are dairy free. And so I'll get Teresa to pop that along when she sends the stuff. I'll send you the link.
Pop that through, Bernie. I would love it, because we love to be able to support everyone with all the different intolerances that happen. That's amazing. Someone's asked how long the sliders keep for. Have you tried the buns? Sorry, have you tried freezing these ones?
Yep, I freeze them all the time. I've got 4 in my freezer at the moment. So they keep for a couple of days in an airtight container, and then they'll keep a couple of months in the freezer, and you just let them defrost to get to room temperature before you eat them. And you can pop them in the oven to warm them up as well.
Fantastic. Thank you. I am actually a little bit inspired. I've been making the grain-free, gluten-free rolls, but they've got a lot of egg in them, and these ones look like they've got a better consistency for my slightly fussy teenagers who are on the couch. All right. Yes, we're now objecting. We're going to go back to Kathy, who has been making that beautiful choux pastry. And I know we're a little bit over our hour, but I'm grateful that everyone has stuck around, and we're nearly finished. But you can't go without seeing the end of these. Here we go, Kathy. Now, can I unmute you? You might have to unmute yourself. I'm sorry. We're all very technically proficient. Well done. Over to you.
There you go. Is that right now? Okay. All right. So basically, they've all been done, and you can see I've put a little hole in the bottom halfway through, and they're nice and crisp. They're easy to cut. So just cut around. Don't cut on your thermomat. So being very careful there not to do that. So cut them in half. You can see there's a couple of different shapes, a tiny little eclair and, you know, shape and the round. So they came up really well. I think the smaller you do them, the better. So now I've got my cream here. So I'm going to just fill the base with that. And I did that around the wrong way. So I'm going to do a different one. And I'm about to do the same again. So here we go. Put our cream on there. Place it on your plate. And then your top, I've got some melted chocolate here. Just some dark chocolate. And you can let excess drip off. And then we put a little bit of our nut mix on top. And then there we go. And you can see here, I've done the others. So you've got a great little dessert there, or afternoon tea, morning tea, high tea, if you want to do that. So very easy. There you go.
Thank you, Sandy. Sandy just commented and I read her name. Anne-Marie's pointed out it's very cruel. It looks like you're offering us one off the plate and none of us can actually reach through and take one. They do look amazing. And I'm looking through the link to the website where this recipe, the person who developed this recipe came from.
It's from this particular book, Hungry and Fussy. Helen was one of my first TM31 customers, and I checked with her today if it was okay. So yeah, I've typed up for you, Therese, there, sent it across the Thermomix version. So yeah, you can all get that, and she's got a great website for any other gluten-free recipes. She's really got gluten-free pastas, lots of things like that, all down pat. She's Greek, so she's got a lot of Greek things, all gluten-free. So she doesn't want to miss out. She's a celiac, so to her it's very important. Okay.
Beautiful. Thank you, Kathy. I am going to come back to me. My puddings are finished. So with gluten-free, when you do gluten-free substitutions, sometimes you need to cook for a little bit longer because, you know, the batter can be a little bit wetter, but I didn't add any extra time. And if you have a look, it's got all that beautiful steaming moisture. Those ones have still popped up beautifully above the muffin tray they're in. And these ones, oh my goodness, I honestly wish we had smell-o-vision. They are perfect. So they're just going to slide out, and then I'm going to pour toffee over the top, and then who knows what's going to happen. But before you all go, I had a couple of things I wanted to share with you. So I'm not sure if any of you are aware, but we actually have, some of us have been dropping in why we love being consultants today. And the reason we're doing that is we are always looking for people to join our team. We always love having extra people to come along and be part of the fun. And we do have a lot of fun, whether in lockdown or not. And at the moment, we actually have a special offer. So I do have the box that contains the special offer. So give me 1 second. If you become a consultant in the month of July, this amazing box will turn up on your front doorstep as your business kit for $62.50. So it's incredibly cheap to join up and get a business kit at the moment. If you're thinking of upgrading your Thermomix to a TN6 or getting a second one on the bench like I have, you can earn one. And what's in the box is worth about $350. So one of my favourite things is the apron that you'll see us all wearing, our beautiful chambray apron, is in the box. The tissue paper's in the box. We have our thermoserver, 2.6 litre thermoserver, which is amazing. We have our beautiful bread mat that Bernie was showing you, also amazing. We have the apron. We have all the paperwork that helps you to actually understand how to do your job. And we also have the travel bag. Travel bag on its own is worth $120. So, you know, it's a pretty cheap way to get a travel bag and earn yourself a Thermomix or earn some commission. So if that is something that interests you, please have a chat to your consultant. And if you don't have a consultant, I'm going to be sending you an email, so you'll be able to write back to me and I can find you a consultant. For those of you who are still here, I am going to I'm really bad at launching polls, but I'm going to launch a quick poll because it's always really helpful for us to know how we can help you following this class. So if you don't mind responding to the poll, there's 3 questions. And it gives you the opportunity to say if you'd like to learn more about how you can become a consultant and get yourself a business kit, and whether you'd like a cooking experience, and whether if you haven't already got a TM6 or you think you need a second one, now's the time to do it. So don't worry, filling out the poll doesn't mean I'm going to be on the phone going, sign you up. It just means that your consultant will actually get in touch with you and see what further information you might need and any support you might need, because really that's what we're all about, is actually making sure that you guys are getting the absolute most out of your Thermomix, and being able to make all that great food for your families. And as a lot of you have explained on here tonight, being able to actually make food that caters to your family's intolerances is really important. Having a Thermomix is the best way to do it. And it's the reason I bought mine 10 years ago. I only became a consultant 3 years ago. Loved it so much that, the old, I loved it so much I bought the company. I didn't, I swear. The original family who owned it still own it. But I became a team leader after 6 months as a consultant. And now I'm actually an employee. So I work for Thermomix as the business development manager for, as I said earlier, North and East and some of South Sydney. I cover a whole beautiful area. I get to do it while not living in Sydney, which means I get the best of both worlds. I get to work with amazing people, but I also get to be at home on the farm with my kids when I need to be. So as a consultant, it's really flexible. And as an employee, it's really flexible. So that's my little sales pitch to you all. Thank you all very much for completing the poll. And if you haven't, don't worry. I'm not going to knock on your door and ask you why not. But I am going to finish the recording shortly. And yeah, thank you all. If you've got any questions, we'll stick around for a little bit, but I will also be sending you out the email later on tonight once I've got all those links together so I don't miss any, because we put a few extra in the chat. And for those of you in lockdown, stay strong. We've got you back. One of the links I'm going to send you is a link to all the other classes we're offering over the next couple of weeks, because we think that being able to jump on and watch a bit of cooking is a really good way to help our sanity and your sanity. So we've got you'll see Sharon, who made the dosa tonight. She's helping out with a Vietnamese cooking class this time next week. During the week, we've got a Varoma class. We've got a cocktails and nibbles class, because let's face it, after a couple of weeks in lockdown, everyone needs a cocktail. The good thing is most cocktails are gluten-free. So there you go. And what else? We've got a bread making class the following week, which I don't know if I've put that onto the link yet, but I will before we go tonight. So we've got lots of different classes coming just because we love it and we love sharing with you and supporting all of you. But yeah, if you enjoyed tonight and you think, oh, I'd like to do that, talk to your consultant, find out about our half-price business kit coming on board. And as I said, if you don't have a current consultant, drop me a line when I send you the email and I'll hook you up with someone in the area local to you. Okay, it has been a delight. So I'm going to stop recording. And yes, I